Hello, so my name is Maren Jacobson, and today I'm going to be going over how to use my website for deciding how to plant and giving you some tips and kind of letting you know what you need to consider when you're trying to create a habitat, specifically a pollinator garden. So if we go to the home section of my website. Um, you're going to go up here, you're going to go how to plant. And so this is my guide to garden that I created. Um, it's a pretty general guide. I wanted to create it more general because that way you can kind of take it in whatever direction you want to go to. Um, but anyways, starting off, for a garden, you will most likely want to put down new soil. So, starting with you want to start with a fresh piece of land. And so, if you have grass already on that land, then you would have to like desod and basically take that grass out. You're going to need to do some weeding, various things. Basically, you want to start with bare land. And then you want to put soil on it. So if you click on here, these are some tips on how to remove sod, um, which is the grass. If you scroll down, this is for adding the soil. So once you've cleared out your like little plot of land, you're going to want to add soil, and you want a generous layer of soil. And then you can just click on here, and this takes you to this. Usually I would recommend Miracle-Gro as the brand of soil. um, that's a pretty popular one, and this tells you kind of how much soil you're going to need for the dimensions of it. And you don't want to be scarce with the amount of soil that you're putting on. You want to make sure your plants get a bunch of soil. Also, it depends how deep your roots are going to go. You know Definitely look into it and see if your plants have any exceptions as to how deep you want to or you should build up that soil. But yeah, this kind of has a guide for that. So after you add your soil, this is kind of where you start putting your plants in. Well, what plants are you going to put in? So these are some kind of like tips and things to keep in mind when you're selecting your plants. So you want to have a very diverse garden. That's what's going to make a healthy garden, and that's going to make it more effective for, it needs to cater to multiple like species of pollinators. You don't I mean, you can, some people do just want a bee garden, or whatever, to attract bees, or just want a butterfly garden. But if you want more of a prairie pollinator garden, then you want a wide variety of plants that cater to different organisms. Um, so you want, like butterflies, bees, maybe, hummingbird plants, other bird plants. Definitely keep in mind it's something that I didn't know when I was before I had done any butterfly work. I have done like butterfly way stations in the past, which are basically just butterfly gardens. Is that butterflies need both nectar and host plants. So the nectar plants is what the adult butterfly, the mature butterfly uses as food, and then your host plant is what the caterpillars are going to use. So, if you think of probably sorry, the most popular, a monarch butterfly, they need milkweed as their host plant, but they also need other plants when they are actual adult butterflies in order to sustain themselves. So definitely keep that in mind when if planting plants for pollinators. Um, Try and cater to a few different species or um, have plants that might, that are more universal that multiple different types of pollinators can use. I would say, but the most important thing when selecting plants is making sure that they're native, especially because it's we are working with prairies and pollinators. You want to make sure they're native because that's what, I mean, if you want it to be a prairie garden and we want it to be effective in helping kind of restore habitat and restore some of that prairie into our communities, then you want it to be native to where you are. So make sure these prairie plants, make sure these pollinator plants, make sure they're native. You can go to your nursery, you can ask them for native plants and kind of guide you to find native plants, to find native pollinator plants, and that way you're going to get a more effective garden because it's going to be catering to what is supposed to be there and what the pollinators that live here need. So yeah. Also, don't be afraid to sprinkle in different prairie plants that aren't necessarily pollinator plants, like to other like grasses and wildflowers, in order to make it just not a pollinator garden, but also to like, bring the prairie into it. So this is just more on plant selection. Um, when selecting plants, believe it or not, there's more that you have to consider. So before you do it, obviously you pick a spot that you want, whether it's a grassy area in your backyard or a flower bed or a place near a park or whatever it is. You kind of want to survey the area. You want to know how much shade it has, how much rainfall it gets. um, And so, for sunlight, we'll go with that first. Once you have your designated garden spot, you kind of want to maybe watch it throughout the day, see it throughout the day. Is it, in complete sun all day? Is it only sunny for part of the day? Or is it like totally shaded pretty much the whole day? Because there are different plants that need different amounts of sunlight. And you might put a plant that likes a lot of shade. If you put it in a very, in the middle of a field with no shade, it's gonna shrivel up and die. So you want to make sure you kind of cater to the spot that you're putting it in and make sure that you're gonna get the right plants for that spot so that they can grow. So yeah. And again, pick the native plants that like the amount of sunlight that is going into your garden. Um, so when you're planting, something I didn't really think about until like my mom taught me is you need to make sure you're not putting your plants too close together. And so is a um, this is kind of a species by plant species basis. So this is definitely something you want to look into. Some plants, you want to place a little bit further away from other plants. And so that's just something to kind of keep in mind. And sometimes that can come with the plant, or it can come with whatever seed packets. Seed packets usually have instructions if you plan on using seed packets. But if you don't, if it doesn't come with a plant, it's super easy to just look it up online. How much space do I need to put in between whatever plant species? So, um, sorry. Here, there's also plant selection. If you click on here, these are native plants of North America. And so you can look, all of these are plants by Texas ecoregion. So if you live in Houston, I think you are able to kind of click on, whichever one. So let's say we're in Galveston, you want to do this Western Gulf Coastal Plain, and this is going to, you can click on plant lists, and this is going to have tons of different plants and native plants. So that's just kind of one thing that one tool you can use. But bee-friendly plants, Central Texas milkweeds, again, this is for monarchs. Hummingbird plants, plants in your state. So this has tons of, this wildflower center has tons of resources and plant lists. So I think I may have missed, I guess this is just, let's see. Okay, these are just more tips. These are some other plants you can look at, and this has, if you pick any of these do kind of have some directions and kind of talk about the plants and, see the growth habits, how far it spreads, which kind of tells you how far apart you want to plant these guys. So things like that. But yeah, this has a bunch of neat plants, and it kind of shows all of these guys that use these plants. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now you have your plants, you have your land cleared. How do you actually plant these guys in the ground? So obviously you're going to dig your hole, and if you don't know how deep you want to dig, I like this figure is pretty good. You want it. This is for potted plants. Seeds are different. Again, that you would usually come on, a seed packet, or it's, simple to just look up. But this, if you have a potted plant, you want the potted soil from, it being in the pot. You want it completely covered. And you'd usually want, about an inch or two. It depends how big your plant is, but this says, bury stem up to the first leaf. And that'll just make sure, that your plant is stable in there. Make sure that your roots are nice and covered and that they're not going to get exposed, because if you plant it up, like if you have to build the soil up around it and kind of created like a dune of soil in order to cover the potted soil or to cover the roots, then your hole's not deep enough, and that soil can easily get weathered away, and then you're going to have your exposed roots, which isn't good for the plant. But all different plants need different depths, so while this is kind of a good starting point, I definitely recommend when you choose your plants to kind of look up and see how deep they want that you should plant these guys. This link has kind of more planting tips, like transplanting it from the pot to the ground. Um, yeah, or if your plant is, is growing sideways. Yeah. So if you're like, where do I get these native plants? Um, like I've said, local nurseries, plant nurseries often do carry some native plants. Some native plants are much harder to get a hold of. Um, there are organizations and groups of people that are very like I guess their job and what they focus on and what they've been working on is growing native plants. Um, and you can often apply to receive some native plants. Um, but a lot of these native plants, especially prairie or especially pollinator plants, um, you might be able to get at your local nursery. Um, but here at this link, really. So yeah, if you go on this link, you can search suppliers, or you can just enter a zip code. Okay. That didn't work. Okay, well, maybe not. But recently updated suppliers, you can put in. This is the same website, but you can use to look up national suppliers. And that's also just another resource on how to find native plants. And thank you guys for listening. If you have any questions, you can always use the contact form on the website and fill it out. And I will try and get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks.